Hi everybody. In this video I would like to show you data binding in the designer. As you may or may not have noticed, there are two new tabs here. One's called a Schema Editor and an Action Editor, and they work in conjunction with the designer. When you lay out your screens, it would be really nice to be able to, for any of your inputs or things that you want to do data binding, to just select from a drop down the property that you want to be bound to. And that's the purpose of the Schema Editor. Likewise, if you had a button and you wanted to have an action or some sort of behavior be performed when you click on it, the Action Editor will work that way as well. So we're going to kind of follow the same kind of sample that we did previously, and that is just kind of create a customer screen. I'm going to first start out this time though with defining a schema for customer, and then we'll kind of build the screen and the actions on top of that. So let me come over here, and I'm going to grab some sample code that I have already for high-level schema for a customer, and I'll drop it right here. So what this is this is just a sample an array of fields that basically define how we map the objects in the view model. So this basically is implying that on our view model, whenever the screen is running, that we have a property called controller, then data, and then first name, middle name, and then last name, with the labels first name, middle name, last name, and then finally what types they are, strings. I'm going to add just a little bit more information over here before I save it, and that's just what's the name of the schema. I'm going to call it customer schema, and then the label so that I can select it from the drop down. Cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a simple customer screen. And if I just grab maybe a 3-column layout again, a form, 2 input buttons or input controls, and then a single button, we will then add some binding to it. So I'm going to come back over here. Again, as you notice, you'll see all of my JSON that's actually being built off of that when I do drag and drop. And that makes it easy for me just to validate and make sure everything is working properly. Let me select the form, and let's just fill in some information here. So, customer form. Just keep it simple. And then I'm going to go over here to the screen, and I'm going to call it customer. You'll see here there is now a screen schema as a drop down, and I'm just going to select customer as the schema and then jump back over to properties. When I select this first input, we're going to call this first name, and then with the binding I'm going to go ahead and select first name, and that binding is relative to whatever we picked over in the screen settings. As far as what the schema is exposed. Last name, and then down in the binding as well, I'm going to pick last name. And then finally we'll at least fill out some of this information. We'll come back to it a little bit later. I'll do a submit, and I'll leave it like that. Okay, so as you can see, we now have a customer form with 2 input controls that are data bound. We do have a button, but nothing really is wired up yet, and we'll come back to that and walk you through how that works. What I'm going to do is just hit save, and then I'm going to hit preview, and that should allow us to take a look and see, okay, and this is what we've seen in the past. That's cool or not, but no, really not a lot of stuff happening here. Let's take it a step further, and let's go to our action editor. There are no actions right now that are defined for customer, and if you have an action that has the exact same name as your screen name, then we have a convention over configuration that tells us, hey, go ahead and load this when the screen loads. I'm going to go ahead and grab some sample code here that I want to have executed when the screen loads. So I'm going to just create an init function. It doesn't even have to be a function. It could just be this part right here, but just showing you the flexibility that we can do it. And then we have self-controller data. This controller in the data has first name and last name. So hopefully you're starting to see a pattern here that this is actually going to be what we're going to be bound against. And the way that this works is, as long as the name here matches the name of the screen, it will automatically be executed when the page loads. So initial customer action is what I'll call that. I hit save, and now what I'm going to do is come back to the designer, but I'm going to open up another tab just to jump over to customer. And we should now see, when this actually loads, that we'll have Matt Duffield, and it's data bound. Well, that's pretty cool, because now we can actually test and play with screens. Again, this is rather static, but at the same time, you could swap that out and use a data service or web API and pull it straight from the database. And then with this submit, we could actually call a save on that. What I'm going to do next now is I'm going to show you another action that we have. Let me refresh that. And this action is going to be what happens when we actually hit the submit button. I already have one set up here called save. And if we look at it, it's just going to say hello from customer screen. Great. So that's not too terribly exciting, but let's reload our screen that we already had. So here's our customer screen. Let's load this back up. And you'll see that we have everything we needed. But only thing I need to modify now is just the button. And what I want to do here is, now I have a button action. And I'm just going to go down here and select save. I've got that. I'm going to come over here, hit save again. And I'm actually going to close this guy out and hit preview to reload. And when this executes, we should now have a button wired up that says hello from customer. Again, you should be able to do a lot of things with this. You should be able to have, simple data binding, or non-static, where it's actually coming from web API or some sort of service. The same thing with your buttons, and not only with the buttons, but then you could wire in other actions that you wanted to happen. The conventional configuration is if the name matches, so it's customer, your action matches that name, it's going to use that. One other thing that I wanted to point out here is that right now I'm just using text to define the schema, which I actually like, because in the future I want to be able to do what I did in the past, and that is, when you upload a schema, to give you the ability to actually have it auto generate a form, more like a tabular form that just top down, and that would be really good. But I'd love to know whether or not there's interest in seeing a form over this, where you would actually have a collection of fields where you just say add new, and then you could give the metadata for it and specify that. Either way, just be nice to hear what your feedback is for that, and kind of get your ideas. The same thing with the actions, where you think you'd like to see the actions go. I've tried to make it so that you have, based on if the name matches the same, it's automatically going to execute. But there may be other things. I see both the schemas and the actions something that can be community driven, where we would have schemas that match any vertical or line of business, and that you could be able to just pull them down and use them in your forms, whether or not they generate the forms as a first step, or that you use them for data binding. And again, that's kind of the power of JSON, is the fact that it can be schemaless, or you could use schema with it to enforce it back on your back end. Either way. But I'd love to kind of get your feedback and hear more about what you guys think about this, your thoughts, concerns, and how we can make this better. Again, thank you so much for watching this, and I look forward to hearing some feedback. Thank you.